for those second, third, and fourth tier bots. Today will be their time to shine as we look at the top 10 Transformers that should appear in more fiction. Haven't appeared in enough fiction. Fans voted. These are the results. It's Monday. It's countdown day. Top 10 Transformers that deserve to be in more fiction. That'll be our topic in the latest GotBot Counts Down. Hey one, hey all, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, your most humble of hosts, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, please like, comment, share. Of course, subscribe while you're at it. Light 'em up, baby. Hit that notification bell, please. Helps me out a ton, let you know when content of all sorts goes up here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, all the groups that I'm either a mod or an admin for, as well as all of my social media links. All of that's in the description down below, also in the description down below, and if you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. Check us out on Patreon. See what we have to offer to you through spring, or of course hit the join button at any given time and become a channel member. And as I said, this will be the top 10 Transformers that deserve to be in more fiction. And the voting was very wide on this one, with some surprises along the way. We actually have 10 honorable mentions. Honorable mentions did not rank. They are not in any particular order. In fact, honorable mentions had the exact same number of votes. We have 10 of them, which can tell you how close the voting actually was. They include Landmine from, I think, Cybertron, if I'm not mistaken. Magnavox, the combiner from Beast Wars. Yes, I thought he was going to get a lot more support. Slipstream, I also thought she was going to get a lot more support. Superion, the G1 combiner Superion. Not just the aerial bots, but Superion himself. Wheelie, as one voter said, maybe if they got to know him, they would like him. Right? Maybe if they got to know him better, they would like him. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Deathsaurus as a big baddie. Yeah, I would definitely get behind that. Though he has had a couple, like, the thing is, the minimal fiction that Deathsaurus has been in has been significant. But I'd like to see him in more too. Springer, who shockingly hasn't been in as much fiction as you would think for somebody who's more of a top tier guy, I would argue. Perceptor. Six Shot, yeah, Six Shot, give me more Six Shot, and Sideswipe. So that's the honorable mentions. None of them ranked. None of them made the list. So you know what we're going to do, because we do this every week. We've been doing it this way for a long time. We're going to do as we always do and kick things off with number 10. You know where this is going. Burst. Coming in at number 10 is Devcon. And a lot of people say, hey, he was only in that one episode. And indeed he was. Now, Devcon is kind of a little more complicated because he definitely had more fiction in the comic books, where, you know, he was kind of seen as happy and jovial. He became, after the Great War, he became like a peace marshal, though that made him cynical. He's best known as being a bounty hunter with really efficient internal systems that really allow him to outlast whoever it is he's pursuing. In animated, he's actually in the Hall of Fame as a great ninja student who actually caught cryotech at one point. And if you want to go to the Bayverse, he was a quadruped with like a quadruped Decepticon in, I want to say, Dark of the Moon. That was on the moon when Sentinel was there. And he came for like the big battle in Chicago. Anyway, he was taken out by the Wreckers. That was a huge departure. Nevertheless, in terms of prominent fiction, this guy hasn't appeared in a lot. And people said, you know what, he's a cool character with a kind of a cool backstory of being an efficient, skilled tracker and bounty hunter. Why not give him more fiction? I tend to agree. Devcon takes the number 10 slot. Coming in at number 9, we have one of, I would say, Megatron's most loyal generals with Lugnut. And, of course, like, he's appeared in the Align Continuity novels and some of the, like, G1 comic books. But his real claim to fame is, of course, animated. And since animated, he really hasn't appeared in any prominent fiction. I think a lot of people thought that with the cult following that animated Lugnut got, that we would see him more often. And, indeed, many would argue that Clobber is a version of Lugnut. And in a lot of countries, Clobber is a version of Lugnut. Not in North America. I would venture to say that Lugnut proper is more of a sibling to Clobber. I personally would love to see both Lugnut and Clobber together in more fiction. But so loyal and so powerful, so loyal to Megatron and so powerful, you would really think that in subsequent fiction, more often than not, Lugnut would be peering over the shoulder of Megatron. That hasn't happened, but maybe it should. Lugnut takes the number 9 slot. Number 8 takes us to the only combiner on the list, but one of the most feared combiners with, Predaking. Represented for me by Unique Toys, what was this guy called? Unique Toys Warlord. Because he's the closest thing to a proper chug scale Predaking. And I love Predaking. A lot of people that voted for him said, look, each of the Predacons is vicious enough by themselves, but together as Predaking, he's one of the biggest, most revered, and most feared of all combiners. Not to mention that he has a huge cannon, a huge sword, and just the wingspan behind his head alone is impressive. If you're going to feature one threat, one combiner in more fiction, make it Predaking, and he takes the number 8 slot. Now, I thought number 7 was a very interesting addition to the list with Grotusque. Now, a lot of people said Grotesque incorrectly. The name is Grotusque, which is kind of funny, because I think Grotesque would actually fit better since Grotusque actually doesn't have tusks. Weird. Of the 3 monster bots, he is the one who is jovial. He is the one who has a good attitude. He is the one who likes a laugh, maybe a little bit too much, and it makes him somewhat irresponsible. That said, it's hard to be mad at the guy because he's also a very skilled fighter and a strategist. After all, if fighting wasn't fun, this guy wouldn't do it, and he certainly wouldn't strategize. A brilliant, analytical mind that's able to be used to come up with strategic attacks while also being somewhat a little bit of a irresponsible, arrogant, but yet fun-loving guy. After all, as the wiki says, to him, death is as much of a joke as life. I find it interesting that a lot of people said Grotusque and by association the other monster bots, but neither of the other 2 monster bots had any votes. Just this guy. Funny enough, hey? Other than some kind of appearances in like the Marvel comics and some of the other comics, his real only claim to fame is the Headmasters cartoon and his limited appearance there. I think a lot of people would like to see this character more fleshed out and probably be the leader of the monster bots. I don't know. Time will tell if we ever do see him more fleshed out, but for now, in terms of a character that deserves more fiction, Grotusque takes the number 7 slot. Number 6 is Prowl, and G1 Prowl in particular. A lot of people said even though we've had Prowl in other things like the Aligned Continuity, like he never appeared in the show, other than G1, the only thing that's a claim to fame for him really has been his characterization arc, if you will, in IDW, which a lot of people hated because they said it really made him out to be a jerk. I mean, we all know my feelings on IDW. I find them to be a very juvenile amateur company that I don't think ever should have had the license or the licenses that they currently have, because they're not a good company. That said, and out of the way, people that voted for Prowl explicitly said not his IDW version. They want the heroic guy. They want the guy who believes in justice and doing right. They want a police officer that you can look up to, and that would be Prowl, at least G1 Prowl, and he takes the number 6 slot. And now a hush falls over the crowd because we've reached the ever-coveted, ever-popular halfway mark. And at the halfway mark we have G1 Hound. We've had one scout in Bumblebee kind of get all the spotlight for years and years and years and years and years, but the other scout, I mean, other than being in Bayverse, where he was really more akin to Bulkhead, if anything else, we really haven't had any prominent fiction for Hound. Sure, he's been mentioned here and there, and his character model showed up kind of in the background, so to speak, during Unicron Trilogy, but for Hound proper, we really haven't seen him since the good old days of G1. And not for nothing, he was pretty rough and tumble both in vehicle mode and in robot mode. And if push came to shove and you needed someone to have your back, Hound was pretty capable of doing it, both practically with his skill and ability, but also cerebrally by use of trickery, most notably his hologram projector. Hound is one of those that got cool abilities, a cool look, and a likable character that probably deserves more fiction, and he takes the number 5 slot. Coming in at number 4, we have Skyfire, or Jetfire, if you will. I put all of those votes together. Specifically the G1, a lot of people said, look, it was nice that we had the name and a plain figure revisited in the live action movies, and he was pretty dynamic, but a huge departure from the G1, even though he was a Decepticon that ended up defecting to the Autobots. They did stick with that. They said we had a hint of extra characterization for him in the War for Cybertron trilogy and the character growth that he had there. But truth be known, the guy had a great character setup, being a scientist who doesn't like to battle and best friend of Starscream, who started out as a Decepticon and realized, man, these guys aren't good, and defected to the Autobots. It could have been a very heroic character. He could have been the guy that when you're in real trouble, you call him in as your backup, and he will be the guy to come in and really be able to save things. Even though he's not someone who likes fighting, there was a lot of depth that could have been explored there. And he ended up really becoming no more than a Transformers transport. We're going to fly you here, we're going to fly you there, we're going to fly you everywhere. But the potential was there for more, and fans would like to see more, which lends this guy very nicely to being in more fiction, and he takes the number 4 slot. Number 3 has suffered some of the same fate as both Hound and Skyfire for sort of the same reasons, except he's probably even appeared in less fiction than Skyfire. I'm talking about Trailbreaker, and I wouldn't have thought of Trailbreaker, honestly, and maybe that's part of the reason that he deserves more fiction. A lot of people said, look, Trailbreaker was always nice. He seemed like he was easy to get along with, but at the same time, he was one of the bigger, tougher bots, and he even had a rough and tumble alt mode, where if you had to go over rough terrain, get Trailbreaker to do it, because he will break a trail. But in terms of actual fiction, he most often was only called in when they needed a force field, and if you didn't need a force field, you kind of didn't need Trailbreaker. Some people find the character boring, and there was a debate with a couple of the voters where they voted for Trailbreaker, and a couple of people said, yeah, but he's boring. And the voters that voted for him came back and said, maybe that's because he has not had enough fiction and enough character development. Maybe if he did, he'd be more dynamic, especially with a cool ability like a force field. Maybe they're right. Either way, enough voters feel that way that Trailbreaker was able to take the number 3 slot. Number 2 was fairly prominent and fairly egotistical in G1, but we sort of haven't really seen much of the guy since. I'm talking about Sunstreaker. And you know what? I'd be cool if Sunstreaker had more fiction. Good character, people said quite skilled. They said cool alt mode, cool bot. Arrogant? Yes, but he could back up his claims, right? If it came to being tough and he was arrogant about that, he could back it up. If it came to his paint job, look at his alt mode. Look how sleek he looks. He can back it up. Yeah, you know what? I can get behind it. Sunstreaker, number 2 spot. And now here we are, very tippy top, number 1. And number 1, I think, is a perfect pick for a character that deserves more fiction, because it's kind of a 2-in-1, really, with Punch Counterpunch. I mean, you had a guy here with 2 alternate robot modes. You had a guy here with an unassuming car mode. You had a guy here who is known to be a double spy. There's so much that could have been done with this guy. Whether you wanted him to be a hero and side with the Autobots and really be the reason that a lot of the Decepticons' brilliant plans get foiled, or whether you wanted him to really side with the Decepticons and betray the Autobots and finally have the Decepticons win, or have his own motivations, his own story, his own reasons for siding with the Autobots at certain times or the Decepticons at certain times. However you wanted to play the character, there was a billion places to go, not to mention the whole kind of psychosis and psychological break that this guy could have by going back and forth between both sides, the moral dilemmas he could have by going back and forth between both sides. Yeah, Punch Counterpunch. So much potential, and maybe one day we'll see it, even though we haven't seen too much of it yet. He takes the number 1 slot. And my friends, that's 10 down to 1 once again, and so many more had votes. Let's run through as many as I can. Probably not going to hit on them all. Dino from the Bayverse. Break, because we need more penguins in our life. Roller, G1 Roller. Thunderwing, Primus, Gears, Windcharger. Catilla, I like that one. I'd be down for more Catilla. Countdown, who apparently traveled the universe. He should have had lots of adventures. Quake, the double target master Quake for sure. Alpha Bravo. Came in for a cup of coffee with the aerial bots, and we never sort of saw him again. Sideways. Specifically his Unicron Trilogy iteration, Nightbeat. I mean, so much detective work that could be done there. Defensor, Skylynx, G1 Mirage, G1 Inferno, Beast Wars Inferno, Beachcomber, Space Warp, Lockdown. Yes, Lockdown for sure. G1 Skyfall, Star Upper, Ultra Magnus, Override, Menasor, because we've even had versions of the Stunticons that don't even become Menasor. So Menasor, Violent Jiger, absolutely. Nexus Prime, I mean, Nexus Prime is the guy who's behind the Shroud that sort of ended the multiverse, right? Quick Switch, and Six Shot, of course, which we mentioned earlier. Cyclonus, Shattered Glass Ultra Magnus, Outback, Trax, Thundercracker, because we tend to get some Skywarp and some Starscream, but you don't get a lot of Thundercracker. Star Drive, Astro Train, Trigger Happy, Big Convoy, RID Strong Arm, Beast Hunters, Predaking, World, Tankor, Smolder, Hotshot, Giaxus, Moonracer, Tripticon, Metroplex, Hoist, Cliff Jumper, Skyhammer, Striker, Grand Max, on and on and on and on and on. So many wonderful characters that really haven't had their time to shine. You know what? I don't know if your favorites made the list. I don't know if your favorites appeared on the honorable mentions. I don't know if your favorites were in the, afterthought mentions at the end. I hope they were. I tried to cover as many as I could, but yeah, the main list itself was a doozy because we had so many wonderful bots and only 10 actual slots. Let me know what you think of the list, where your favorites landed. I appreciate you guys coming by, giving me some of your extremely valuable time. I do know how important it is to you. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. Check us out on Patreon. See what we have to offer to you through spring. Or, of course, hit the join button at any given time and become a channel member. While you are at it, hit the subscribe button. It helps me out a ton, right? You know, stick around, have some fun with us here on the channel, right? But most importantly, above it all, man, do not forget, not for a moment, not for a day, not for a minute, not for a second, that yes, you right there, you do make a difference in the world, whether you know it, feel it, or not. And I appreciate you guys coming by and giving me some of your extremely valuable time, and I very much look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit right here inside the videos.